Welcome to the Self-Care for the Creative podcast, where we talk about self-care strategies for creatives, empaths, and highly sensitive people. I'm your host, Stefani Fryzel, aka Dylan. I'm an artist, a songwriter, and an author. And today I have a very special guest, and we talk all things self-care along the creative journey. I'm so glad you're here. 'Cause I know I'm ready. Drew DeLeon is the co-founder and chief community officer for a global music and tech community called the Digilogue. Starting in 2016, he co-founded the community with a belief of paying it forward for indie artists and rising music professionals. The Digilogue programs music educational conversations, career resources, and artist discovery content. Drew has over 13 years of experience in the music industry and currently heads digital marketing for Def Jam Recordings. He's also a partner and president of an indie music distribution company called NPR Global, recently known for breaking the artist Money Long, who received a Grammy Award for Best R&B Performance. Please welcome Drew DeLeon.
Hey, everyone. Thanks, Steph. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, of course. So why don't you just introduce yourself and give us a little bit of a backstory about who you are, what you do, and the platform.
Yeah, definitely. So I always like to introduce myself first. Drew DeLeon, first gen Filipino American, born in PI, grew up in Queens.
Nice.
Immigrant parents. And I think, I was grateful to grow up in a very diverse neighborhood. It allowed me to kind of see the world differently and accept different cultures. I was always inspired, I was always creative growing up. But, I think for a lot of expectations for immigrant parents is just always to get a corporate job, whether it's finance, be a doctor, a nurse. So I decided to pursue business. So when I went to college, I studied marketing as my undergraduate degree. But I think for me I've always just had a thing for being creative. I didn't necessarily know at what capacity, but I knew marketing allowed me to kind of share that in the business sense. At the time when I was graduating, there weren't a lot of marketing roles.
Right.
And my school was primarily focused on finance. So I found myself interning at a finance company and then eventually got a job at an investment bank right after college. And that was really my entry point into just corporate America.
Okay.
And with that, it was more so just to one, make my parents happy. I thought, getting a job and living in the city, and I think you kind of check off a list.
Right.
So for the first 3 years, I thought I was doing the right thing. I made my parents proud. I was the talk of the town, during the holidays. Oh,
Filipino
Drew,
pride. Yeah.
He's working at this bank and he's amazing. And he's living in the city. Oh man, the minute I pivoted, changed the story. But, I was 25 at the time. And I think leading into that, your inner spirit, your energy within you, kind of a sense of self-awareness hits. It's whether it's the job that you're at either inspires you.
Right.
Is it a money job? What is your purpose and your why?
Right.
And I was, I think a lot of us go through that. And then early on, it was just kind of itching. It was every day, now, this job pays the bills, but this ain't it.
Right. So there was a turning point for you where you were okay, I'm going to do corporate America. And then all of a sudden you were okay, this creative piece of me is calling, pulling me into doing something different. So at some point you ended up switching. And then I think you created the Digilogue in 2016. Am I correct? Or
2016.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what was the original vision for that? And what inspired you to create it in the first place?
Yeah, I think my entry point to music was so unconventional that I just became the manager of my friend who was an inspiring DJ. I didn't necessarily have a handbook or a guide or a resource or a place to go to.
Right.
So speaking from that kind of challenge, those initial challenges leading into fast forward, let's say 6 years into the Digilogue inception, I was if I'm feeling this, if I went through this, I can only imagine from an artist standpoint, professional, anyone that's trying to get into music is probably
100%. 100%.
Feeling the same thing. So.
Exactly. And, you mentioned you're Filipino. I'm Filipino as well. I'm half Filipino. And I was just wondering, go Filipinos. Team Filipino. By the way, what is your favorite Filipino food? Total sidebar.
Kare.
Yeah? I'm a lumpia, pancit, chicken adobo.
Yeah. I love all. I do have to say, I've had to scale back. It's for special occasions, maybe like once every 2 weeks. I love it, but great for the soul.
Right.
Not great for the heart.
I can't have 2 pounds of pancit today. No thanks.
Yeah, exactly.
I know it's too easy.
Number one, definitely on my cuisine list for sure.
Amazing. So the Digilogue is all about education, community, artist discovery, and getting music career opportunities in front of people. And it's so cool what you're doing. I'm such a big fan. And the way that you hold the community is just really inspiring. So I wanted to just sort of loop in, how does being Filipino and being part of an underrepresented community motivate you to change the game?
Yeah, I think at the core, I think one from just Filipino principles and just family orientation. I think within a family dynamic, everyone looks out for each other. Mm-hmm. And I think growing up, it wasn't about just me, it's about us. And I think that mentality kind of carried over to the way I treat my friends, the way that I look at other people. In a world where it's about me, and for me, I think that's where those kind of initial foundation started. And I think also to your point, being underrepresented, I think there's a lot of people that feel like they're not seen or heard or feeling like they're visible. And, I've always felt like that, I have to either work harder or stay extra hours, to really prove or validate my worth. Right. And I think, I think a lot of artists and creatives, feel like that. And I just wanted to create a space where people feel safe, feel seen, don't have necessarily those initial resources. And yeah, that's really where it stemmed from. I call the community DigiFam, and I think the relationships I've been able to build throughout the years, and it's crazy to say we're entering year 8, but
that's amazing. Congrats. Yeah. That's so cool. Yeah.
Crazy. Volunteers that are now part of our core team, now our founders, professionals that started in their entry-level roles are now becoming executives, artists that are we're bubbling or really bubbling now. So it's really cool to see the growth of everyone.
Occurring. Yeah.
Yeah.
So part of the reason why I want to have you on this show is because this podcast is all about self-care strategies for people in creative communities. And I just wanted to touch briefly on what you're currently seeing in terms of trends with mental health and how you think that the Digilogue is helping offset challenges that artists and creatives are facing. I mean, obviously, community is such a big piece that can give you such a tremendous amount of support, and accessibility to information is so powerful. So I'm just curious, what are you seeing right now, just trend-wise, in the mental health space? What does that look like for your community right now?
Yeah, I think one, just letting the community know that they're not by themselves in their journeys, right? So oftentimes artists and creatives kind of see it from a singular path and singular lens, hey, this is my journey. I got to figure this out.
All on my own.
Against the wall.
Yeah. Me against the world. Yeah.
Me against the world. And in reality, that's not the case. And I think because they may get jaded through past experiences, and not to say that the people we connect with at these events are going to necessarily change their trajectory immediately. But I think for us, it's putting people in position where they can meet like-minded folks at these meetups and feel going back to my point earlier, I feel like they're being supported when you kind of lift each other off collectively. You're not necessarily feeling like you're doing it by yourself.
Exactly.
So that part.
Exactly. Yeah. It's not just being transformed through the community. So, and what I love about it too is because there's no shortage of the feeling of competition, everywhere you go. And, but being able to collaborate and communicate and support and uplift each other is exactly what you're providing. And I just think it's Really super cool. So what were the challenges that you faced throughout building this thing, or just in the music industry in general?
Yeah, I think there's two journeys. I think one from a personal like career standpoint, and then also within the Digilogue. I think from a personal career standpoint, I think just letting my immediate family know and just my network, they thought I was, going AWOL from going from finance to music. Yeah.
Like, are you crazy?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And, it was definitely challenging because you have to humble yourself. It's one that's like a change of like, your circle. You understand who really cares about you because you're not necessarily like, at a place where at one point I was buying everyone drinks, it was just like, I had the disposable income to do so. And then now I have to be frugal. I have to be hustling, working like various jobs just to make sure I make ends meet. And I think that allowed me to like understand the intention that I built relationships with. I also realized towards the latter part of my career is that I didn't necessarily, in the beginning, I took like a lot of like what the feedback from my parents and family, like personally, because, I was like, oh, you didn't believe in me. But the reality is they can't see what you see, right?
Exactly. I'm so glad that you brought that up because that is the core of what artists and songwriters have to face generally. We are walking paths that most people aren't walking, and there's going to be a ton of people that don't get it, especially friends and family. And like, yes, you love them, they love you, they care, but they're not in your shoes. They don't understand what your passion is. They won't see the vision the way that you see it. So yeah, you hit it right on with that. So that's like the personal piece that makes you feel that was like your personal journey. And then once you started working on the platform, like what sort of challenges did you come up against?
Yeah, I think initial challenges is, I think once you start to do it because it's a passion project is, you start to put your own income, into it. So sweat equity is figuring out like how to scale it. And for a long period of time, for at least the first 4 years, was just like, all right, let's just get sponsors. Let's just do events. People had different ideas as to like what it could be. And I think in the beginning, it was really just more of a networking kind of like connection platform. I think once the pandemic hit, we realized there's other areas that we can really support the community through like job resources. And then other like artist discovery opportunities through our playlists and so forth. So I think expanded. Yeah. And I think for any founders or any entrepreneurs or startups that are listening to this or creatives that are starting their own thing, it's like you also have to let your idea iterate and grow because you have to listen to your community as like what they want. You can't just be like, hey, this is our final product and you gotta have
right.
We know all the answers.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly the same with any kind of collaboration. Whether you're songwriting with somebody, it's like here's my idea, but until you have someone else bounce it back to you and be like, here's another idea for the pod, then it transforms, then it grows, then it changes. So that's a really great piece of advice for sure. Are there any like self-care strategies for you that you like to implement? Just because I know you're obviously a creative entrepreneur, you're paving the way for a lot of future artists and songwriters. So obviously we get it. Like every day is totally different. Like, is there any like things that you're like, I cannot live without this every day?
Yeah, I think I really realized that during the pandemic because I'm a product of hustle culture. I was conditioned to like be the first one and the last one out, and I thought I was okay. And eventually that adds up and it obviously seeps into your health. So I think for the weekends is really family time. And when I say family time, like spending, catching up with my parents, spending time, siblings, or just like making sure like I do things that I enjoy, whether it's kind of catching up on reading. This year, my friend inspired me to create an accountability sheet where like I just check off these things every day that I'm supposed to do, whether it's like reading for 15 minutes, stretching for 10 minutes, drinking a half a gallon of water.
Nice. Yeah, you got to get your basics in, the basics of self-care in. Yeah, so you have your checklist every single day. Okay, so let me ask you about the accountability piece because So are you saying that without this friend, it would be really hard for you to stay on track, but because you have the friend and you have to check it off and keep yourself accountable, it gets it done for you? Is that
Yeah, it
kind of
was
what
more
you're
and more
saying?
like, instead of a list, she shared like a spreadsheet, and literally just like I just check it off to say that I did it. And I think, I've been kind of accustomed to be a task list person. So it just allows me to remind me like, hey, did I do these things? So it just becomes inherently just habits, right? Because it takes about a couple of weeks to become habits. Um, and I think that's important to build any good habits. So that's something I'm doing this year more of. Last year, I didn't read as much as I wanted to. So, and I think the other part too is giving myself grace to allow the team to really take lead on things. And I don't necessarily need to be part of every conversation. It's easy to like, oh, I need to be in control. And the reality is like, you can only control so much, so.
Right. And you can get so much more done when you delegate. So like that, I can totally relate to that too. It's like, I recently just added, more people to my team. And like, it is a little bit of like a releasing of control of like, okay, yes, I can do all these things myself, but I can do even more when I delegate it and just trust the team and, sort of facilitate the vision, but they run with it. So yeah, I'm working on that one too. It's a big one.
Yeah, it's a big one. And the way I look at it too is self-care is like a work in progress. I don't have the immediate answers now, and you work towards it, and I think that's what I enjoy. I enjoy the process of it. And I think it's going to change every year. There's different goals, and I think for now, I have the list that I can accomplish on a daily and build on that.
Right. So what is one piece of advice you give to artists and songwriters that are just starting out?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge, is the self-confidence part. Outside of just the, the crazy expectations, and, I guess the outlook for validation is, I always remind people, and especially with creatives and artists, is like, you're the most important cosign. Like, you got to co-sign yourself before anyone else.
Exactly. Yeah, you have to fuck with yourself before anyone. Yeah, exactly.
And the thing is, that's not easy, because I think everyone has a different trajectory into like becoming an artist, and there's so many other factors that affect the psychology of an artist or a creative, whether it be through your childhood, through just like tragedy, through all these different things. But ultimately, you're in control of what you can control. And I think you can control the way you feel and react to things. And I think part of that is feeding yourself with an environment where it's through the people that you're around, that they're uplifting you, discarding folks that aren't. Part of that too is whether it's like the content that you consume, the music that you consume, even the shows, whatever it may be. It's like, if it's energy that's pushing you back, if it's not aligning with you,
exactly.
then what's the point? But you need to kind of like understand that, because it starts back with you, because that's going to allow you to do the other things that you want for yourself.
What is one piece of advice that you give yourself when you first start out? I like to go backwards a little bit, just because, people are like deep, like years into this industry, like many, like down the road. And then I always like to feel like, if you could go back in time, what's the one thing you would tell your younger self?
Yeah. I think, yeah, definitely give myself more grace. And I think some of the things when I look back on, when it came to time for like family, whether it's relationships or, I compromised those things because I was so focused on the career. And now, obviously everything kind of works itself out. But, I think giving yourself grace that, things will happen. And some things won't happen for you, which may be in your favor.
Right. And trusting that process.
Trusting that process. Sure. And everyone has their own respective journeys. Like, I never want to give like a cookie cutter answer. Like, it's you're your own self. I think there's one of you. You're one of one. you're going to start to kind of formulate what works for you, what you like and what you don't like. There's principles that I think that you should apply to help you forward, but you're going to tweak it. You're going to make it your own. And with the hopes that you maintain that. And then in your creative journey, you're constantly learning and constantly iterating and then evolving into a different version of you each year, you know?
Exactly. So it's like, don't be so hard on yourself in the beginning, because it's like, it's a living, breathing thing that's constantly changing. So it's like, you can look back and give yourself tons of grace. So I love that. All right. So last question, how can people get involved with the Digilogue? Give us like a sort of a touchstone wrap up of like everything that Digilogue offers and how they can get involved.
The Digilogue is a music and tech community. We focus on 4 verticals. Community is one, which encompasses different verticals such as music careers, which allows us to kind of post job resources for the community within the music and tech space. Arts discovery, we like to focus on like the 99%. We support artists through our playlists and different artist programs, whether it's through their releases, artist features and spotlights. And then education, I think, I always like to say, the game is constantly changing. So education should always be evergreen. Mm-hmm. Always making sure that you're always willing to learn and just be up to speed. But as far as resources, making sure regardless of what city you're in, we have reps across different cities. Follow the Digilogue for both in-person meetups, which are we're known for, and then our virtual programming. We have our big temple event at the end of the year called Digilogue Days, which is like our big conference, which hopefully you can be a part of. But the community is super inclusive, and we're, like I said, approaching our 8th year, and excited for whoever's listening for you to be part of it.
Amazing. Awesome. Drew, this was super awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show, and I can't wait to continue the conversation. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you, Steph, and appreciate you for reaching out and thinking of me for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. For more self-care strategies, check out my book, Self-Care for the Creative. And if you're an up-and-coming artist, songwriter, or music producer, come join us at the Songwriter Series. It's an online platform that offers one-to-one music mentorship from hit songwriters. I also curate a quarterly music industry panel to help people break into the music industry and get in the mix. For more info on all my events, visit stefanifryzel.com or just email me at info@stefanifryzel.com. If you're loving the podcast, please share, subscribe, share it with a friend, leave us a review. Your support is super appreciated. And don't forget, self-care is always within reach, and your greatest masterpiece will always be you. 'Cause I know I'm ready.